Hi everyone, it's story time with Dr. Rich Mclean. And if I'm dead, which is a fairly good odds, just blame drugs and mental illness, because it's entirely my fault, and a movement and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice has indeed not occurred. And that the collective prejudice, stigma, shame, blame, the maiming of me, and my destitution, my desecration, a conspiracy to murder of which I survived only to be forsaken by the Australian government for another 18 months and supported by every single person I know and every friend who refused to intervene on the justice issues that exist has occurred. And I have what was I going to say? The memory. I have a will, and I have a my bank account, and the detriment that I'm owed today, living 21st of July, is detriment that is still to be paid if I'm not here. And further to that, as I've proven by example my whole life, by speaking in such esteemed places as Australian Parliament and keynote speeches, international universities, thousands of public speeches, and always advocating for those more marginalised and unfortunate than myself, and being a voice for the voiceless. I wish for any detriment that is collected, alive or dead, to go to the charities that are listed on killhim.info. How more blunt, I don't know how I have to be, considering I believe I'll be killed via proxy by attacks in the money that exploit already existing prejudices that already exist in society, which is a really easy task to frame, exploit, decimate, and exclude, ostracise, reject, neglect, victimise, vilify me, because I'm a vulnerable person and I'm a brave and courageous person, and I have had a public profile of someone who is brave and courageous, and even for things that I've thought I've done wrong, which actually aren't, my clean criminal records below, that I've atoned for things, you know. Now I'm half human, earth monkey Buddha, and half a existing by accident intervention of the suicide attempt that occurred over 18 months ago, more than that, in February 2021. That was deemed a fatal attempt and a lethal injury. I was found with no pulse and no blood, unresponsive, by pure accident via a cosmic intervention, and to that the allegory of a literal crucifixion, and following that the forsaking of me has occurred. And I wish to be a transformational expert. That means that I love people, but the judgments they hold is not is theirs to have. It's not my shame. I can't be blamed anymore. I am a person who leads with my heart and my head, and I'm an earth monkey and a spirit. So my detriment, when it's collected alive or dead, goes to the charities listed on my website, and in that way I wish to transform a currency of what's possible with my money into meaningful, measurable, and ways that go to benefit voiceless people, marginalised people, and will create meaning, love, and foster togetherness and inclusiveness for those people who have found themselves individualised people by whatever reason, and that my detriment is transformed into the meaningful additions in meaning and love to their lives that has been redacted from mine. So I'm abandoning the people who have abandoned me. Oh, well, I can't. I love the people that abandoned me, but I can't. I can't be included in society when society's rejected me. So that is the way it is, and that is my wish, to be a transformational expert, and that is indeed what I am. And this little talk today is just going to identify and value, the sinner that I am in my earth monkey suit, and acknowledge the allegorical resurrection Christ figure story that has happened in my my rebirth and my continuing being forsaken by society, people, family, and friends who don't stick up for me, and for whom powerful political figures and characters in the Australian political scene have acted with brutal force and a really, really cowardly force to further prejudice, demonise, discriminate, medicate, and damn me to fucking death. And I'm going to name, in a little story, the people that are responsible for this further oppression following my already forced suicide, that I felt I'd lost hope in humanity, and that was violently acted out by me on myself, but from the reason of systemic government oppression, aided and abetted by those who love me. Thanks. I committed fraud. Yeah. I am desperate for money, hey. It's hard being a vagrant. So I got my drug dealer, because, I'm on drugs, and that's why I should die. I got a letter. I made an invoice and made it out to my drug dealer, $5,000. He was going to get 80%. I was getting 20%. He was getting 80%. Of course, he fucking ran off with it, didn't he? So Matt Scroble, if you're listening, hi mate. Thanks for fucking off with my money. Real champion, exploiting a vulnerable person like that. But really, you're no different to the other sinners that exist systemically, from the local coffee guy who won't intervene in my issues. But thanks anyway for the sandwich, Ed, which I had to beg for this morning. And right up to the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And these attacks are cowardly. They're made by proxy by often nameless, faceless individuals with a responsibility to act within the Charter of Human Rights of a person with a disability, to which I identify. So, I'm either too mad, not mad enough, too clever, too dumb, or depending on who's got the money, they chop and change. Anyway, whatever I am, this is a little bit of my story and the identities and the shame and the who held the shame and the blame, and who carried the torch of oppression and victimisation, vilification, identification, medication, persecution of me, and here's a list of those people. I'm owed multi-millions of dollars. Not outstanding is a legal, just, equitable settlement from Steve Isonides, who goes under Stefan or Stefan on the ABN tax register because he was hiding his money from me. I had a 5-year relationship with that toxic narcissist, and I have pity for him. He's got no soul, and he is feeding off the pain of other people. Now, he legitimately tricked me, deceived me. He was present at a murder, so he says, and that further, he sold $1 million house, which he lied about and said he lost the money. However, I've found out that due to ABN registry, that he registered a different financial setup. Yeah, and that was hiding his money. It's legitimate that we were living together for 5 years. No one can deny that. Alive or dead, that money has to go to my trust in order to help marginalised people. And further to that, he's instrumental in incarcerating me at least 3 times in a hospital, one of which I gave up from systemic government oppression underpinned by powerful political figures, and that I actually died. He's complicit in a big person, a big stone thrown. There were thousands of stones thrown at me in the stoning death of Dr. Richard Mclean, and he did it in an extremely cowardly way, hiding, behind his government officialdom and behind his conceited greed for money and his position of power and privilege, in which he knew me very well as an intimate partner, and for whom he knew of my vulnerabilities and then utilised and amplified them in order to exploit me. And it's one of the reasons I ended up in the hospital. It's still outstanding to this day. Steve, I have pity for you. Love you, but holding on to money at the expense of someone's life is really sad. And addition to that, you never really let me fuck you. So I'm going to fuck you now. Okay? Cheers, Steve. Losing my virginity to Debbie Morgan, hi Deb, love you, at the local police breakup when I was 19 was a formative taste of the Apple experience. It was entirely consensual. Unfortunately for me, a vulnerable young person unsure of their sexuality, which isn't a crime, and it's not a crime to experiment with sexuality either, gave me the grief and guilt and the faction, i.e. half faction, half fiction, half fact, of the oppression of the already implied gay prejudice and homophobia that existed in society and with fucking pigs in the police force. That was an entirely consensual thing. Oh, thank you, Debbie, for the experience. You're now famous, but I wish her well, and I've always wished her well. And every time I start to get on well over the years, because as an extremely sensitive empath, I'm extremely sensitive to nuance, tone, people's body language. I can feel, just by being present somewhere, what the vibe is, what's being said in the space between spaces as libel and slander and the reputation. Now, as it stands, I still have maybe the neuroses or the faction of people saying I'm a rapist and all this other kind of stuff, which is entirely untrue. In fact, I've got my criminal record from the Australian Federal Police. It's clean. I guess if I'd done something wrong, it'd be on there. But then again, it's been proven to me that libel and slander can get you a long way, and it doesn't have to be admitted. It can be just implied. And to that, I'm happy. Deb's happy. I've checked up with her over the years and apologised profusely, and for any harm I may have caused. But that deceit was the first deception, you know, and that was the real genesis of the unfolding of my psyche, framed by non-acknowledged child sexual abuse, which no one has acknowledged, including my family and Geelong Magistrate Court. And further to that, that the toxic, narcissistic, and simple family that I grew up in as an authentic, sensitive person was extremely damaging to me. And it came to pass later in life, after I'd literally killed myself and survived by accident, that everyone watched, waited, and didn't intervene in any justice issue. In fact, supporting Steve Isonides, supporting Dr. Whittaker, which I'll get onto in a minute, and supporting the idea and the implied homophobia that already exists. Now, so the whole losing of the virginity thing was a heightened amplification of the sexuality that was so buried in shame for me, that amplified and really encouraged the factual persecution of me via that incident. And it was abhorrent, and I'm sensitive, and I understand that people stick up for people, and I understand that you know, there's angels and demons, but you've got to understand too that that the loss of innocence wasn't that night for me. It was when I was about 6 and 7, and then again I was grateful, but I won't name those people to save ruining their lives, but that's a well documented thing in my book, Recovered Not Cured: A Journey Through Schizophrenia, which I'm now exploited for, and for which powerful people, I think, saw a vulnerability, and they saw an honesty that was refreshing. They had no concern, however, for my reputation and my chances at getting forward in life. Now, at the time, I had worked my way up as an artist, an insular and inhibited but expressive, trapped human monkey, and really letting the spirit fly. And it intuitively detailed the cage that I had found myself in as a human being with a divine nature and a human monkey sin about them, you know, or mistakes. So Erica Wagner was pivotal in that, and she at Allen & Allen really championed that book, and she says she's proud of it. But I only made about 10 grand about that, but I made a career about it, about speaking about stigma, prejudice, sexuality, and other ordinary experiences from life over my life, and that served to undo me later in life. It was a Human Rights awarded autobiography, and it was a Sane Australia's Book of the Year. What I acknowledge now is that I didn't really realise how exploited I was being at the time, and for that, it was a bit of a devil in the detail, you know. Yeah, I forgot what I was saying. I'll go on a minute. I've loved, I've been raped, I've been abused, sexually abused, I've been the subject of narcissistic family tendencies, and, you know, a controlling, overbearing, pathologically narcissistic mother, and a distant father who probably assumed his son was always a poof. This is a dad who has umpired nearly every kid in the fucking world and has a great public reputation. Unfortunately, still love you, Dad, but hanging up on me recently and witnessing this whole life of mine unfold, and still not being an agent of change and a person who intervenes in my poverty, is deceitful, and even mother dearest, a day after I survived certain death from systemic government oppression, which I'll go into in a minute, my mother told me, "You recorded that, doctor," and to that, she was satisfied that I deserved that experience, and she'd exonerated herself from any wrongdoing whatsoever by believing the libel slander that Mr. Ball, a very powerful lawyer of Ball and Partners, slandered me internally to government agencies as a conspiracy to pervert the cause of justice, and set me up to fail for a long time, and that really helped render my position as a scapegoat and as a person who would always be exploited and never win. But I think a win's knowing yourself and knowing exactly what's going on and knowing the true nature of human beings, because the truth will set you free, and I'm free. I'm not afraid to die, and I know exactly and articulately and will explain the collective sin that has been cast on me, and the judgment and the shame that's not mine to have. I've loved and all that stuff. I've had lots of relationships, had a good time, rocked it out, playing in bands. At one time, I was exploring the world and researching the human condition by drawing for many years, or decades in fact, and then further extrapolating this in an intellectual way in a PhD. And for that, I was very isolated. I had few people. Just because you don't understand me does not mean I'm insane. It means that either there's a communication breakdown, or it means that you are deficient. And the world is deficient to individualism, and broadly, society and governments don't appreciate people who are individuals, or truth seekers, or truth makers, or the avant-garde, the light keepers, the poets, the artists, the keepers of the flame, and many a time these people who are collectively, archetypally in a Jungian way known as scapegoats, are exploited, and the sins of society are pinned onto them, needle by needle, spear by spear, in their back, in the community, and they're sent out into the wilderness to die. That is the archetypal description of a scapegoat. If they happen to survive and come back, like I did, the world can't admit what they did to them. The world can't share that collective guilt, and there's no agency to pin it on them, because they've done it a stick at a time in the faggot of oppression that's killed that scapegoat. And further to that, it can never be acknowledged in a rational way by a single person, but I'm going to in a minute, and by this doing this, is describing through identifying people who the key stakeholders were and what the themes were that managed to collectively exploit and damn that person to death. Now, I've said on my Facebook profile once, I'm like an infertile female baboon. I'm kicked to the edge of the fucking tribe because I've been fucked all my life and never produced a child. So in the eyes of the troop, I'm absolutely fucking pointless to their survival, and I survive on the shreds and the second-hand food like I have today. I begged for a sandwich, and then they die in the bushes and forgotten. However, I'm going to make it so that my story is not forgotten, and that everyone knows that I have love for them, but they have forsaken me. And those female infertile baboons kicked to the edge of the tribe to die in the bushes and feed on the scraps of the tribe have an extremely fucking interesting perspective on society, people in the tribe, because no one can see it from their perspective. Now, I ask every single human who has acted in congruence with this conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and this vile victimisation of me, who has proven on the opposite side of his worth and then was exploited and then damned, I forgot what I was saying. I just forgot my train of thought. But anyway, look, it's a very difficult place for me to be in, but I'm going to make it clear the people and identify them in my further crucifixion and likely death that that are responsible for this, and it exploits already existing prejudices within society. But you can't just generically put this blanketly over a whole society, because there are actual individuals who I have recorded and I will publish with this for researchers and sociologists to actually, and religious people to actually see what it is that I have suffered in my existence. My nana said, always be as nice as you are. I like to think I've tried to do that. I've made mistakes because I'm a human earth monkey Buddha person. But I'm also here by cosmic design, and regardless of any religiosity or God complex, there's an allegorical story of persecution, death, resurrection, forsaking, and then God gets angry. I don't know what's happening next. Maybe I do, but yeah, it's just been too much for the earth monkey part of me to fathom in existing. I don't have enough to exist. I'm owed multi-millions of dollars of detriment, and I cannot get an acknowledgement anywhere, anyhow, anytime. It's cooked from the top. I've had to reverse engineer this because it's been my experience that's ended in my death that I've been persecuted. And further to that, then further forsaken, even right up to the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet, ASIO and IGIS. And further to that, I'm just not a normal person. I'm actually quite for what I'm capable of, established person in society who's spoken many times on the Today Show and on the radio and all that kind of stuff. Now I reckon I've done a pretty fucking good job, and I reckon that it is almost like a cosmic thing or an allegorical redemption story. But in the whole gist of it and the basic batshit facts at the moment, after my death, the government put me on job seeker. I was already on sick leave and I'd already been on a pension before. That was just another kick in the fucking head that I've got. When I finally got the pension, it's not even $1,300 a month, and my rent is $1,646 a month. Now that's existed for the last year and a half. That has been the epoch of me being forsaken, whilst I have millions of dollars in detriment that is owed to me, and even after my death they still conspired to render me bereft of prosperity systemically and via agencies like the Australian Human Rights Commission, who kicked $1 million deal to the to TAL, who eventually gave me a settlement, which is why I know that Australian Human Rights Centre were pivotal in free kicking that neutral conciliation to the opposition. I'm absolutely aware that Tim Goss and Peter Fisher and the heads at AFCA were already informed. Rich is coming. He's got financial detriment. Let's make him suffer. And to that, I threatened them that there was a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. My intuition is an allegory of spirit, and that's God. and I knew something wasn't up. That's why I recorded it. That's why there's evidence. That's why it is incomprehensible that anyone could see any different than conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, where I was set up to fail, actually existed, and these people in positions of government privilege and power, which shouldn't act outside the Charter of Human Rights of a person with a disability, and also have human rights law to act within the remit of, they are absolutely required to not treat me in the way that they did. And there are thousands of them. I won't go into naming them. I might just actually just go .gov.au and publish the entirety of my government communication. That will be sufficient for examiners to explore and detail and ledger this systemic abuse that has gone to the top, and in the journey of that, it's killed me on the way. The key political power figures in that were Mr. Ball of Ball and Partners, who created a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and liberal slandered me to agencies, internal government agencies like APRA, like NHPOPC, like the police, like IBAC, and like the Ombudsman, when he well knew that he informs government policy, he informs the Ombudsman, and sits on the government legal bar. I had fucking no chance. Now, I was framed as an extortionist for innocuously checking, because I check reality. I record things. I wanted to know, am I going crazy? Am I not telling him week after week I want to kill myself and nothing's been done? And it was a conversation with myself, God, and a witness. And to that, I was framed as an extortionist, and so Mother Dearest says, after I kill myself. And yeah, at the time, I actually gave back $100,000 at Mark Eng, the old owner, from Raleigh Street in Footscray, where me and former cunt-sake partner lived. And he gave me $100,000 for my advocacy work because he saw my website and he knew how much I loved the house. And he said it was a mistake. So I gave it back. Money has never been my currency. It has been the transformation of my knowledge, intellect, and what I'm humanly and with faith capable of doing to act in a way that I suppose put me at the centre of things, but also put the marginalised at the forefront. And I was a spokesperson for those people. And I stuck up for a lot of people. And, yeah, crucified for it. The other political underpinning, of course, is Steve Isnides, who's greedily and shamefully and by cowardice holding on to his money, which he owes me. And also, it's within the time limit of a legitimate court process. It killed me. Like, I already overdosed from that Dr. Whittaker thing. That's why I brought it up. I'd actually forgotten about it because I record lots of things. I only found the suicide note when I moved to Susie's. And then I realised that a great injustice had occurred. My ethics didn't sit right. And call me a pig-headed, but I wanted to get to the end of that. I wanted an atonement, and I offered the doctor an atonement, and I offered him a way out, and I just wanted an acknowledgement that it happened, and it never came. And that's because Dr. Whittaker's not registered for GC, and he's not who he says he is. So there's a whole lot of inconsistencies that go with this story, which are now in the public domain. Mr. Ball, you have actioned a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Dr. Whittaker, I'm sorry, I forgive you, but you acted unethically with malpractice and you gave me the drugs to overdose when I said I was going to die. This is partly the fault of the practitioner when you've got an ethical framework to follow, but it's also a part of the systemic, implied and ingrained stigmas, prejudices that exist in society, which he knew about. And he's another doctor who knew about Steve Isonides and me together, and his ASIO and all this kind of stuff. He knew. I gave him gifts. You know, I'm not a bad person. I still like to think that even if I'm dead, that my nana has given me good advice, and that is always be as nice as you are, and for hook or crook, you know, to be forsaken, you want to fucking you fucking want to cut loose and do drugs and die fucking in 6 feet worth of cock. You know, who cares? I'm not a saint, but I haven't done anything unethical. But the prejudice and stigma and the shame and the blame placed on me is ill at odds with the sentience that I am. So it goes on from APRA, NHP, APC to IBAC to the Victorian Inspectorate. It goes on, and of course it's gone all the way to the Prime Minister. I've asked the Attorney General for her support, knowing that my work cover is still outstanding. That's probably a TPD now because I can't think or remember things. I've got a good vernacular and I can get a stream of consciousness going. That's from another area, but I can't remember what I was saying or doing the next thing. It's all up in my head. It's overwhelming. Not one person in the world should have to suffer the violence of neglect that has ended in my death and further forsaking, and not one single person in the world should have to put up with the abuse, slander, libel, neglect, violence, or the amplification of potential violence, or the continuing ostracisation, neglect, and really heinous ruin by proxy via people's prejudice that the whole world has done to me. It's an abhorrent way to treat one human being, and you know, people that I think I'm just no one, but I'm someone, and I'm someone who's a bit unusual in that I have a public profile and I've worked for the newspapers. Like when I was at the Herald Sun, I wrote. They didn't like me. I was too left leaning, and they got rid of me. The Herald Sun went to the Age. When I wrote my book, the Herald Sun, big headline: "My Descent into Madness," and I was publicly vilified. I thought it was okay that madness was used as a synonym to describe the book, but what they were doing was framing me and vilifying me publicly. And I lent into that by being a public speaker for it. So all of a sudden, I'm happy working as a illustrator for the Age, and the story comes out in the Herald Sun. Next thing you know, I've lost my job at the Age. They roster me off. I don't know the value of myself. I'm just happily enjoying my life. I'm rooting, I'm drinking, I'm working, and all of a sudden, I'm exploited, and my courage and my pro-feminist stance and my honest appraisal of mistakes and regretful things, but my narrative was then used to publicly exploit me, and I had no idea. I acted in good faith, and it rendered a situation whereby later on in life, very private partners would be aware of the emissions and not the emissions, the ways in which society and people had amplified via way of communicating around me the neuroses that I'd done something wrong, and that was again amplified, and is amplified again today with the continuing persecution from voices, faction, hallucinations, whatever you want to call them. I'm alone in the world. Why? Why have I been forsaken? I'm a nice person. Why is it that even my blood sister, blessed it is, Cotton Socks, she's just a scared human being, afraid of losing her money and her privilege. But why does she say, you're a drugger and a schizo and get the fuck out of our lives? And I never hear from her again, apart from when I say, you are witnessing my destruction, and I email them, and she further acts to incarcerate me by identifying me as ill, at risk, It's not about care, it's about punishment. And they don't like that I'm calling them out for exactly what they are. And that's simple-minded, afraid people who consciously and willfully choose ignorance over the diversity of human nature and diverse values, opinions, and experiences to mimic the 1950s mum and dad, buy a house, have kids, get married thing that my parents, in their stupidity, indelibly stamped on all of us kids. And for that, I like to say this simple metaphor or allegory. If you ask a fish about the water, it doesn't know what you're talking about. My life has evolved to such a degree that, yes, I lived in that fishbowl. I grew up in it. I felt ill at ease with it, always, in abuse and the non-validation of who I was intellectually and as a feeling sensitive empath. But I had to grow legs and escape out of that. And by doing that, I transformed myself, not only by coming out, but other things as well later on in life, to be amphibious. That means I've outgrown the water, I've grown legs, I've gone somewhere else, and I can see it objectively from afar. And there's actually a piece of art that is Objective Vision from 1993 that is channel spirited, and it describes with much clarity escaping the very knee-jerk manifestation that is this reality, of which spirit's different, and or it's implied in it, and that I had, by intuition and by struggling and by brutal honesty and mistakes and all this kind of stuff and gains and joy, advanced my soul and advanced my nature to be part of something broader, greater, more divine, less delusional, and more authentic. And for that, people who've chosen ignorance can't stand me. You know, I love all my family, but I mean, why would I forgive them? I can't reject those who have already rejected me. I have love for them, but they are nowhere to be seen in this injustice that is me here today, state-sanctioned having to take medication and needle in the arse for delusions of persecution. Now, why might the government want to suppress and medicate me? I wonder. You know, it just folds in on itself. You know, I absolutely know what's going on. I'm articulately aware of what I'm doing, who I am, and I've had to render by accident and fate the conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, which goes all the way to the office of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and is an abhorrent and gutless way to victimise a single important person. And no one should have to, as an earthling, suffer, or can indeed barely suffer, that amount of systemic ingrained abuse, neglect and ostracisation. As it stands, I'm on a DSP. I've lost millions and millions of dollars in detriment. I've lost my work cover case. I've lost my HCF insurance. I was framed out of my job from 2 VOCAT cases. One, I intervened in a violent affray, saving a person, rejecting my Buddhist morals for intervening and smashing someone because I thought it would save the guy they were killing, and the police redacted the freedom of information, which was a video of the event, which would have exonerated me of all wrongdoing, and blamed it on me. The other one was my sexual abuse case, child sexual abuse case, but I'd already been framed as an extortionist, and therefore the magistrate, or whatever the powers that be, said get rich and fuck him up for whatever, he's a rapist, pedophile, you know, dog fucker, all these things, and that was set up to fail too. And it rendered me intelligently and systemically a vagrant. And these people are individuals, and they're in government. Greg Hunt, the health minister, he knows of the Whittaker thing. He told me to go back to the Health Complaints Commission. That was the start of my journey. He well knows that. He well knows that it's a legal thing in man-made law to accept a one-sided recording under the Surveillance Act 1999. That is a detriment I am still owed, and as of this date, I want to go to court. I forgive the doctor, but I shouldn't have to suffer this. That's a detriment that's owed to me. There's a detriment owed to me from the extra units of cover that my 2007 TPD payout was paid out. I paid for 8 units. I have the evidence. AIA, the insurer, know that I can't go to AFCA. So it's cooked every way. And when you're as cooked as I am, there is not much hope for moving forward in any possible scenario. I can't go to police. I can't get a lawyer. I can't be a whistleblower. And every single person in my life has forsaken me. Why? Because either I'm gay, not gay enough, too straight, not straight enough, or too smart, too dumb, too mad, or not mad enough, or a druggo, or too right. And it's a difficult place to be, and it's untenable persevering. One by one they left. As things amplified, the oxymoron of oppositeness of me being so important reduced me to a very insignificant person in the world. However, the whole world is aware of my situation. I'm well aware that I act like a screaming banshee. It's kind of implied that I fall into that already exploited narrative of being the mad banshee. But in actual fact, these are legitimate and legal concerns, and they need to go to my detriment, and dead or alive, they need to go to my trust to support people with, like I said, but the people that have supported me, the money that mum and dad did give me, they get that back. Mick Connolly, other people, I've listed them all on my website, they all get their money back. They helped for the sake of helping, that's enough. But I had to suffer a whole lifetime just to die and be forsaken, and then be nice, like Nana says, to help others. Everyone gets their money back, and give them an extra 100% on that. Millions of dollars of detriment. Oh, there's a impairments case from 2007 plus interest, 150 grand. Blah, blah, blah. There's another 750 grand. There's see, when you're worth so much money, in theory, without having the agency to act within man-made law, because you're not deemed a part of the society, and you're not deemed a legal and equitable person with access to the law, as the Charter of Human Rights with a Disability actually dictates, and every public official is within their remit not to act outside that remit, that I don't exist anymore in society. I've become everything and nothing, and I'm famous, I'm infamous, and now I'm an infamous vagrant begging for food. What would you do if you were me? It's no secret that finally I found Dr. Horgan, who dumped me, and he raved about the dexamphetamine treatment, and it's no secret that I medicated with methamphetamine after my incarceration, because they reduced my methamphetamine to nothing. It enhanced my delusions. Well, maybe they just couldn't handle the truth. And Dr. Kumar, congratulations, you were overseeing that hospital, and you were well aware that I told you in private, and it will be in your notes, that Steve Icenides was present at a murder, so he tells me, and he was exploiting me, and there was danger, and I felt at risk. You are well aware of that, and the movement of oppression that hospital oversaw, and the continuing oppression, even though I died in there and I can't get justice, and I can't even get an atonement for dying with an illegal thing inside their hospital, is an abhorrent way to treat someone who is only doing the best he can bravely, and it's killed him. these forces of oppression act with cowardice as faceless pawns in agencies, and are always protected by one thing, and that's money, power, and privilege. Something that I don't have, but I do have sentience, and you can't stop me speaking. These positions are an enormous, arrogant amount of conceit and conceitedness and untouchableness, that they can do whatever they want, and they get away with it, and they do. But as of today, and when this is published, the detriment owed to me by the many people in positions of political power and privilege who are acting with nepotism to protect their mates in positions of power, public privilege, is absolutely clear. Every single fight I've had in my whole life, just simply trying to value my fucking existence and the defense of the opposite of that, I have had no representative or lawyer. In actual fact, I've been a spokesperson for people like me, and now I am the spokesperson for me, with absolutely fucking no support whatsoever. And I'm damned to hell by the police being identified with illness, not being able to report crime. I'm damned by every public official. I'm damned by people who have lots of money, and I'm easily exploitable for having none of those things. And the opus operandi of this whole thing is to keep rich broke so we can't sue anyone. It's an abhorrent thing that I have died from systemic oppression, and even more abhorrent that people couldn't take responsibility for their role in that, and they have continued to amplify the intention of destruction of a single person, me. I'm just sometimes in disbelief. If money's such an issue for people, no one's giving any away. And if ethics is such an issue, or judgment such an issue, and people do it, I've never acted with ill intent to harm people, and I've only acted within my remit of a person in defence of their life and living. And I was exploited and damned to fucking hell. And the human aspect of the nature of human beings as people believing libel, slander, small-mindedness, gossip, intonations, and the implied nature of them being purely judgmental social creatures collectively is, I think, a movement that's been rendered from one person to the next that I just will never understand unless I place a biblical allegorical narrative to it. The other narrative is, of course, my PhD, which goes into other ordinary experiences and different dimensional things. Like I said, just because you don't understand doesn't mean I'm crazy. It means that you're deficient, and that further, there are a lot of people with otherworldly gifts. Some people, scientists might think otherworldly. People can touch things and know about the person. People can hear a name or a voice and articulate intelligently and with intuition, an allegory of spirit, which is God, things about other people that they wouldn't other factually be aware of. We are all resonances of human monkey nature, where spirits having a human experience at the edge of the Anthropocene of the human age, and we're storied creatures, and spirit is a storied thing. I'm both earth and spirit, and that's the way it is. And when I'm gone, I'm not worried. But I think it's incumbent on all the people that have acted in congruence to deny me justice, exploit me, prejudice me, that they actually own their own prejudice, because as the divine section of me says, it's not going to be my problem to own, and I love the people, but I have pity for their natures of being so exploited and judgmental. There's only one that can judge, and spirit, I think, I won't go too much into my spirituality, but there's an authenticity about it, and it's resonant and it's throughout everyone, and there's a contrast between the divine and the banal, and I'm not going to survive this without food, money, a home, people, the connection of the other beings, lawyers. I'm a human monkey, a spirit having a human monkey experience who's a sinner, and I make mistakes, but I have, in this dimension, the world owes me an obligatory legal law, but this is now corrupt, and man-made law is corruptible. As the centre of an elaborate conspiracy to kill, it's incumbent on me to tell the truth when no one person can understand the pure wall of deceit facing me. For that, I guess I'm already forsaken to death a second time, because without fundamental human things that we all need, there is no survival. For me, there is only the elongation of a non-acknowledgement for society's side to accept responsibility for their own prejudice and human frailty and fallibility and fear and prejudice. I'm beyond it. I've moved past, and I have pity for you all. Love yous.